Good morning, GCC kids, and welcome back to Sunday School. Are you getting excited for VBS? I know I sure am, and later today I think our family's going to play a little Ticket to Ride to get into the Rocky Railroad theme. Well, we've been starting our Bible verse, Matthew 6:33, and let's go ahead and review that now. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Let's try that together. Matthew 6:33. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Great job. Well, let's start our time of worship going into our VBS songs.
We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. You make us bold and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey. There's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Wide open spaces for wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. You make us whole and we stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. We're off on this journey. There's no looking back. With Jesus to lead us, we're on the right track. Wide open spaces for wide open eyes. We're looking ahead for the next big surprise. We trust in you, Jesus. You're all that we need. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. We're trusting in you. You give us hope and life that's forever. We stand together. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. Trusting in you. Your power will pull us through. We're trusting in you. Trusting in you. Trusting in you. We're trusting in you. Trusting in you.
Today we live, today we breathe, today we know that we are strong when we are weak. Today we trust, we overcome, take every chain that kept us slaves and throw them off. We're not waiting for permission, we defy our inhibition, like our middle name is fearless, son of red. If we're gonna fly, we fly like eagles, arms out wide. If we're gonna fear, we fear no evil. We will rise. By your power we will go. By your spirit we are bold.
my kids, I loved hearing those VBS songs. And I want to just bring to your attention that we have all of the online VBS materials ready here for you to pick up in the lobby of GCC. If you are planning to do online VBS, you can just go to GCCWS/VBS, and there you will find a box for each day of VBS. There's a day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 box. Click on that box, and there you will find the Bible lesson for each day. You'll find the Imagination Station lesson, the Bible Buddy introductions, and some other things there. But you will need to stop by church to pick up your bag of materials. The lessons are online, but the materials are waiting for you here in the lobby at GCC. You'll need to pick up a bag that looks like this. It contains your Bible buddies, it contains your Imagination Station gadgets, and all of the materials that you will need to do an online VBS at home. Come get your materials, and I hope you enjoy Rocky Railway VBS online at home. Oh, that tastes so good.
Oh,
You would not believe how long I had to wait in line to get my peach green tea this morning. The line was terrible. I thought I was almost going to be late for Sunday school, but it was worth it because it's really, really refreshing. Well, there are a lot of things like that in life. Things that are not always easy, but they're worth it. Our Bible point for today is following Jesus is not easy, but he is worth it. And that reminds me of a lot of things in life. And let me show you what I mean by that a lot of good things in life aren't easy, but they're worth it. Here you see a picture of a young boy who's taking piano lessons. He loves the piano, he loves to play the piano, and so he started piano lessons when he was very young. But it was lots of hard work. It took lots of discipline to practice every day. And sometimes the kids in the neighborhood would make fun of him because he would be inside practicing piano and they'd want him to come outside and play football or basketball. And so it wasn't always easy, but all of his hard work paid off when he grew up to become a concert pianist. And now he enjoys playing with famous orchestras and doing concerts on his own. So all of that hard work, although it was hard, it was worth it. Here we have a picture of a young gymnast. When she was very young, she began taking gymnastics lessons, and as she progressed, her coaches recognized that she had a real natural talent, so she spent more and more hours at the gym. In fact, there came a point when she had to drop out of school with her friends and be homeschooled so that she would have more time to practice at the gym and to perfect her skill. It was a lot of hard work, and throughout the years, she had multiple injuries, but yet it was all worth it to her because she became part of the U.S. gymnastics team. So even though it was very hard, it was all worth it to her. And here we have a mountain climber. Climbing mountains is hard work. And can you imagine climbing up a mountain carrying that heavy backpack on her back? But when she got to the top of the mountain, she said the hard work to get to the top was worth it because this view from the top is definitely worth all the energy and time it took her to get to the top of the mountain. Jesus wanted his disciples to understand that there was a cost to following him. It was not always going to be easy, but he was worth it. And so today, in our Bible lesson, Jesus is going to give his disciples a couple of examples to illustrate how there is a cost to following him, but following Jesus is always worth it. Let's find out what Jesus says about following him today.
Large crowds traveled with Jesus. Many people wanted to follow him. One man said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus told the man, "Foxes have dens and birds of the sky have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Another disciple said, "Lord, I will follow you, but first let me go and bury my father." Jesus replied, "Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead. Jesus told the people that following him wouldn't be easy. It would cost them a lot. Anyone who comes to me must be willing to leave his family. You must love me most of all, more than your own life. Anyone who is unwilling to suffer cannot be my disciple, Jesus said. Jesus urged the people to think about what they were doing. He told them a story. If you wanted to build a tower, you would first sit down and figure out what it would take to complete the tower. Otherwise, you would build the foundation and be unable to finish. People would laugh at you. Then he told them another story. If you were a king, you wouldn't go to war against another king without considering whether your army would be great enough to win the war. If you have too few men to fight, you would send some men to ask for peace before the battle even started. Jesus wanted the people to consider the cost. If you are not willing to give up everything you have, you cannot follow me, Jesus said. Following Jesus means giving him complete control of your life. That is not easy, but it is worth it. Jesus said, "Whoever gives up his life for me will find true life." What good is it to have everything you want in the world if you give up life with God forever? Jesus taught that following him is not easy. It requires commitment and sacrifice. When we trust in Jesus, we give him complete control over our lives. True life is found in Jesus, who gave up his life to rescue us from sin and death. He is worth it.
Our story point this week is following Jesus is not easy, but he is always worth it. Let's take that phrase apart and kind of look at it one part at a time to see exactly what that means. Let's take a look at the first part of our Bible point. Following Jesus is not always easy. So what is the cost for following Jesus? Well, just like our piano player and our gymnast and our hiker had to have discipline, they had to work hard. Discipline is one thing that we need to be a follower of Jesus. Sometimes that means setting aside time so we can study God's word and spend time in prayer. And so following Jesus requires some discipline. It also requires hard work. It's not easy sometimes to do the things that God asks us to do. Sometimes we're going to be misunderstood because we're a follower of Jesus. You know, I shared with you about the little boy who was taking piano lessons, and sometimes the neighbor kids would make fun of him and call him a sissy because he was inside practicing while they were outside playing basketball and football. Well, sometimes that happens to followers of Jesus as well. The Bible uses a big word for that. It calls it persecution. And the Bible tells us that when we are made fun of, when we are hurt, when we are persecuted for Jesus, we're really blessed. And that was part of our Beatitudes lesson last week. So sometimes, as a follower of Jesus, we're going to be misunderstood. Sometimes it might mean we have to give up control of our lives to give God complete control of our lives. It might mean that we leave the comfort of our own home or the comfort of our own country to go to another country in the world to be a missionary, like our friend Jess Lapp, who is a missionary over in the Middle East, and like the Wagners, who are missionaries in Africa. So sometimes it means giving up some of our luxuries or some of our conveniences to help others know and follow Jesus. So there is a cost to following Jesus. But the second part of that phrase says, but he is worth it. So what makes Jesus worth all the sacrifice and all the hard work? Well, just like our piano player and our gymnast realized the gratification and just the honor of becoming a concert pianist or a world-class gymnast, that all gives you a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment. Well, following Jesus has those same kinds of rewards. First of all, Jesus is worth it because he's God. He is the creator of everything. He's the one who gives us life. He is the ruler of the universe. He's king of the universe. And so he's worthy of our service and he's worthy of our love. Another reason Jesus is worth it is he loves us so much that he gave his life for us. He loves us more than anyone could. Jesus keeps his promise. Jesus is always with us. He'll never forsake us. Jesus is worth it because he gives us a sense of joy and a sense of peace and hope. He also gives us a sense of purpose. And so there are many, many reasons why Jesus is worth following and why it's worth the cost to follow Jesus. When I was growing up, in my grandma's dining room, there was a plaque on the wall that said, "Only one life will soon be passed. Only what's done for Christ will last." From the time I was a little girl and old enough to read, when I learned to read, pretty much every time I would go to her house, I would see this plaque on the wall and I would just kind of read it. And those words got into my heart and got into my brain, and they became very meaningful words to me because they helped me understand that really the most important thing that I could ever do is give my life to Jesus and to serve him. And then a few years ago, I got another plaque, which I now have in my living room, and I see it every morning. It was actually made, I believe, by Lucy's mom and Amelia's mom and Ainsley's mom. It says, "It's so sweet to trust in Jesus." Those words might sound familiar because we know a VBS song called "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus," and we enjoy singing that. But when I look at that, I'm reminded that it is sweet to trust in Jesus. Yes, sometimes following Jesus is hard, and sometimes it takes discipline, hard work. Sometimes we're misunderstood, but it is worth it because Jesus is worth it. And there are so many blessings that come with following Jesus. And so I hope that even though it costs a lot to follow Jesus, it's worth it because Jesus is worth it. If we are willing to put our time and energy into becoming good soccer players or basketball players or gymnasts or piano players, how much greater it is for us to put our time and energy into becoming followers of Jesus. And so this week, I hope that you will look for ways that you can serve him, even though it might mean you get out of bed a little earlier, or it might mean you get up early and come to Sunday school, even though you would feel like sleeping in. It's hard sometimes to follow Jesus, but it's worth it because he is worth it. Today, in our questions from kids, Serenity asks Pastor Brian, she says, "Hey, Christianity seems hard sometimes. Is it worth it?" Well, let's find out what Pastor Brian says about following Jesus. See you next time.
Hey there, I'm Pastor Brian, and it's time for Questions from Kids. Serenity from Hebron, Kentucky asks,
"Sometimes being a Christian seems hard. Is it worth it?"
Yes, Serenity, let me just affirm your question first of all, the first part. You're right. There are times where being a Christian is difficult. We all experience this, and the longer that we follow Christ, probably the more we've experienced it. And the reason is this: Jesus told us that would happen. The Bible speaks a lot more about the difficulties that we will experience for following Christ than benefits that we will gain. And so we have to understand when we think about following Christ, we're going to experience more difficulty, more adversity than we will good, positive things. At least that's, how it feels. And so here's the reason why. We live in a world that is opposed to Christ. The world is against Christ. And if we are for Christ, if we take a stand for him and we let people know that and we're living for him, we're living in a way that the world does not like, and it will oppose us as well. This is what Jesus told us. So there are a lot of times where we'll experience difficulties for following Christ. So that's the first part of your question I just wanted to acknowledge. Now, the second part, the real question you had was this: is it worth it? And the answer, of course, is yes. It is worth it. It is always, always worth it. And here's why. Keep the bigger picture in mind. The adversity that we experience is temporary. It may feel like it lasts a long time, but it really doesn't. There will be an end to it. And it will be difficult, but here's the reality. You compare that and contrast that with what awaits us for eternity, being in heaven with Christ forever, where it is all just good and all the sin is gone, all this difficulty is gone, and we will have that situation forever. That makes it all worth it. And that's what Paul talked about. He said, man, I might experience momentary affliction, but I gladly experience that because I know what awaits me, eternity in heaven with God. Here's the other thing that helps me as well to remember is that Jesus experienced affliction. You read through the Gospels and you see time after time where Jesus is made fun of, he's mocked, people give him a hard time quite a bit, and actually, as we know, he was arrested and crucified. And so it encourages me to know that, yeah, life is difficult for me, but the one I follow, Jesus, life was difficult for him as well. And he was faithful to the Father. I want to be faithful as well. So is it worth it? It is, by all means. Question back for you then. What might you give up to follow Jesus, and what will you gain because of it?
This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. 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 Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. Okay, now let's bring it down. This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train. Oh, this train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. This train is bound for glory. Jesus made a place in heaven for me. This train is bound for glory. This train.